Hello, my name is Yaya. Thank you for tuning into Trauma and God. First, let me say that the trauma which happened to you was not your fault. I know personally that healing from the black cloud of trauma is possible, but it takes time. Just as in nature, there's always sunlight behind a dark cloud, so it is for us. God is light, and He's always there. We just have to find Him. In this series, I will talk about things that hinder us from finding the light and things that we can do to help us overcome obstacles. Today's subject is things I can control and things I cannot control. My mother was a narcissist. One of the things she did was to label us. My sister was the good girl, and I was labeled the bad girl in our family. I became mother's scapegoat. Anything that she had done or that happened to my mother, or by extension, happened to our family was my fault. Father worked abroad. When he came home and tried to be boss, he soon learned it was best to obey mother. Mother, with her sharp mind and amazing memory, did as she had promised me. You just wait until your father comes home and I tell him all the bad things that you've done. Well, good to her word. She privately downloaded on my father 6 months worth of my bad actions. I was never part of the conversation, so I have no idea what she said. Well, next, father would call me into the room and give me a lengthy lecture about how terribly bad I'd been, naming instances long past and unwitnessed by him, finishing with, "What are we going to do with you? You are so bad, so disobedient, so selfish, and far too much trouble for your mother to handle." This left me wondering if I was going to be sent away or worse, and always waiting for what my father did next. Later, when the family was all together, father announced it was time for family fun. He was a tall man and had very long arms, and I was always wary of them, but somehow he always managed to catch me unawares like a snake, and he'd wrap his arm around my waist and bring me down to the carpet. He sat across my feet and tickled me until I screamed and cried. He said it was fun, and he tried to get everyone else to laugh and join in with the tickling. Other siblings got tickled too, but they didn't scream and cry like I did. Much later in life, a counselor told me that he was playing this game to reinforce his control over me by reminding me of the times that he had raped me. Well, very fortunately for me, I had a relationship with God. Maybe because I grew up in a home where I was so unloved. One day when I felt God's love for me, I in turn fell in love with him. I was very little. All through my growing up years, I tried hard to hear his guiding voice and be obedient to it. One thing I heard with great clarity was that I had to hold on to my emotions, and I tried very hard to do just that. By the time I became a teenager, I cursed my feelings and argued with God about what he told me to do. It seemed cruel. I hurt all the time, and the emotional weight of guilt and pain was crushing me. Added to that, my well-read and well-traveled parents kept up on the latest news, with father bemoaning the state of the world and giving his quick solutions for every problem. But as everything was my fault, it only served to add to my burden of guilt. I was an emotional wreck when an earthquake hit somewhere in the world, and I would always wonder what I had done to those poor people. It was too heavy a guilt, and I wanted to put an end to it and kill myself. I was 14. Let me just say that guilt is not a bad emotion to have. It's a necessary emotion. We need guilt to help us correct mistakes we've made. It can serve us well. In my case, I had the wrong sort of guilt. I'd been groomed to feel guilty all my life. By now, I was so bad, so evil, and apparently there was no hope for my redemption, that I thought there was only one way out, and that was to be dead. This is not a healthy guilt to experience. I felt hopeless. I didn't really know what to do, and ashamed of my feelings. Nobody knew how I felt. I presented myself as well put together. I was strong, happy, calm, and composed. But most of those things were lies. When I was 16, a young man came into my life, and I immediately told him not to bother with me because I was going to kill myself very soon. He didn't react in shock or horror or run for the hills. He just looked at me and said, "Tell me more." Instantly, my burden was shared. God loved me too much to leave me the way I was. He set about changing me. Well, a few years we married and I got away from my parents, and I set myself on a path to change and be healthy, emotionally healthy. I had to learn how to be that. What a horrible struggle it's been, but a struggle so worthwhile. Here's one thing I learned about myself. I'd grown up with few boundaries. Well, no, actually, the truth is, I could only remember one boundary, and that was a long time ago when we lived in New Guinea, and my mother would say, "You can only go down to the beach with a group of friends." This was now so long ago. Beaches were nowhere to be found around where I live currently, but no new boundaries were ever given. I'm the sort of child that searched for boundaries. I continually pushed my behavior to test for limits, and there were none, which left me astounded. How is this possible? My friends would always complain about all the boundaries they had. But it only served to amplify my feelings of being unloved and uncared for. Healthy boundaries show a child that they're loved and protected. No boundaries show a child that they're not valued and not worth protecting. I realize that the opposite of having no boundaries has a negative effect too. Too many boundaries or boundaries that are too harsh can make a child become discouraged and unmotivated and eventually react badly to their parents. I know that. But good boundaries are healthy. Even God sets good boundaries around us. He's given us 10 tender commandments that serve to protect us in His love. Well, back to my life. As a newlywed, I was left feeling emotionally ignorant and wondered what healthy boundaries even looked like. Have you experienced knowing that there's something you don't know that you should know? But because you don't know what it is you should know, you can't even figure out what's missing? Well, that's how I felt. All I knew to do was keep asking God, what is it I'm missing? And in God's time, an answer came. God's time is usually when you're ready to hear it and when you're able to make the necessary changes to put it into practice. God does not waste His words, and God does not waste His time. Good counseling can also help put words into what we're missing and searching for. And here's some good counseling advice I have found. It's a healthy and very fundamental emotional boundary my parents neglected to tell me. Knowing this might have saved me a great deal of angst. It would most certainly have given me emotional boundaries. The boundary I'm talking about is knowing what things I can control and what things I cannot control. Here are some things that can be controlled if we learn how. Asking God for help. How I treat others, my attitude, my behavior, what I eat, how I bounce back, my reactions, my boundaries, how I express my feelings, to learn and to change, my choices, my thoughts, how I treat my body, asking others for help. I'm sure there's more, but even in this, there are a lot of things, a lot of words. I certainly don't practice all of them well, but I am committed to a path to do them better. My burdens are not as heavy when I only carry what I should be carrying. That is, being responsible for choices I have control over. Now let me tell you some things I cannot control. I cannot control when God speaks to me, other people's actions, what others think of me, the past and the future, how others behave around me, other people's feelings, other people's mistakes, a pandemic, death, the weather, wars and rumors of wars, accidents, the media, politics, acts of nature like fire or earthquakes or hurricanes or floods. Can't control any of those things. Trying to carry these as well is overwhelming. Some people choose to not feel anything by trying to act indifferent, but this ends up making them empty inside, lifeless, blasé. And eventually, they become totally disconnected from any feelings. No, this is not living. This is surviving. I wanted to learn how to live. Well, the antidote to feeling overwhelmed by emotions is to know what is mine to carry, as I've already said, where my boundaries are. The end goal is the same for all of us. We want to live hope-filled, happy, fulfilled lives in community with others and with God. My parents, as I said, left me ignorant. God, in his great love for me, has not let me stay as I was. He has the same love for you, and he wants to change you too. He will bring people and situations into your lives and even allow bad situations to happen in order to help us become all that we should be. In our Bible, in the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 10 and 11, the Message version, which is a modern translation, says, "While we were children, our parents did what seemed best to them. God is doing what is best for us, training us to live God's holy best. At the time, discipline wasn't much fun. It always feels like it's going against the grain. Later, of course, it pays off big time, for it's the well-trained who find themselves mature in their relationships with God." My mother was very wrong to place all the blame on me for things she had done and blaming me for awful events that happened to my family. Unlike my mother, God doesn't hold me guilty for her mistakes or anyone else's. Now that I've been made aware of my ignorance, I can no longer say, "I'm ignorant." I have a choice. Will I do all I can to learn and put into practice what I need to do in order to be healthy? This is a choice only I control for myself. As I can never be reminded of this enough, I'll finish by reminding us of what we can control. I can control asking God for help, how I treat others, my attitude, my behavior, what I eat, how I bounce back, my reactions, where I set my boundaries, how I express my feelings, to learn and to change, my choices, my thoughts, how I treat my body, asking others to help me. Please subscribe and tell others if you found this vlog helpful. If this stirs things in you, please reach out and talk to someone. You may email me, Yaya, at traumaandgod@gmail.com, or read my personal story in Snakes in the Loo at Amazon Books. Help is available at the following: Suicide and Crisis Helpline, 1-800-273-TALK, Rape, Abuse and Incest National Helpline, 1-800-656-HOPE. And there are more. Remember, God is for you, and so am I. Join me next Thursday at 10 as I continue exploring trauma and God.